Welcome to the Beauty in Battle podcast, where we talk about winning in marriage by waging a war. I'm Jason Benham. I've got my girlfriend / wife, Tori Benham, with me, and we are here to talk to you about how Satan tries to get you to fight face to face with your spouse, but God designed you to fight shoulder to shoulder against Satan so that you can win in your marriage. Fighting together draws you together. We cannot wait to jump in. So here we go. So we're talking about emotions. Tori and I, it's interesting. We've been having a lot of conversations with people who are struggling with anxiety and fear and depression and doubt. And it seems like it's greater than it's ever been. And I think a lot of it has to do with some of our environmental stuff, not in terms of like carbonation or anything, carbon dioxide. Did I say carbonation?
We don't believe
water.
It's the carbon.
No, but like with social media
Right.
and all this stuff, I mean, anxiety is at an all-time high. And it's not just that. It's also, I think, COVID has played into this.
Yeah.
Whether you've been sick with COVID or you got the vaccine or whatever, there's something in it that's making us feel a little more anxious and then the lockdowns and all that stuff. But not just that, it's also, as we've been diving into this, we're discovering the crazy power over your body
Right.
that happens with trapped emotions and how it'll rip you apart, but how it'll also wreak havoc on your relationships.
Right.
So we just wanted to do a little podcast where we bring you into our little thought bubble because we're learning some stuff.
Yep.
And we'll keep learning some stuff, and whatever we learn, we'll pass along to you.
Yep.
So
But before we start, let's do some jokes. I got some good ones from Brooke Peterson. Thanks, Brooke, for sending in your jokes. And she must, we must be vibing this week because she gave some great jokes that I can totally relate to. So I'll start with the first one. What kind of shoe do frogs wear?
I wouldn't think frogs wear shoes, but
Open-toed sandals.
well,
Okay. What kind of tea is hard?
wait, you didn't pause for effect. That was pretty good.
I'm going to go
Open-toed
through.
sandals.
I've got 3 of them, so it's
Okay,
kind of going
got
quick.
it.
What kind of tea is hard to swallow?
What?
Reality.
Okay, got it. All right, nice.
And that's what I meant by she's vibing with me because I'm a tea drinker and obsessed with tea.
And she has to use the bathroom every 45 seconds because of it.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother thing. Personal fave. Oh, she said personal fave in honor of your Italian heritage. What do you call a fake noodle?
What?
An impasta.
Oh,
That's
said
great.
like a true New Yorker.
Oh, that's awesome. And we're about to go on vacation with my side of the family.
Yeah.
So we'll be having some good Italian food this week.
Okay, can I just say this about vacation? I think a real vacation involves food being made for you, where you don't have to make it yourself. Hence, all-inclusive resorts, or if you're going with a bunch of families, you pool together and you get a somebody who can come cook your dinners for you at night. That, to me, is a real vacation.
Yeah, of course.
How about that?
Yeah, I like it. Let's make that happen, Captain.
Yeah, we've done it a few times, but not many.
No, we haven't
Yes.
ever gotten somebody to cook for us. We've gone on all-inclusive.
No. We've been on several vacations tour, if you remember, where now we didn't pay for it, but we had friends that invited us and they had a chef. In
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
my
yeah.
gosh. It's the way to go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So if you really want to do something really nice for me and Tor for our anniversary, which is December 29, you can hire us an executive chef to come into the house. Okay. Now let's get into emotion, because there's this incredible Bible verse that we want to go to. It's in Psalm 139, where David, and the Psalms is all about his prayer journal. So he really lets us into the world of what's going on inside of him, and we can really learn a lot from him. But I think about what's going on in marriage and what's going on in relationships, and how emotions, if they're not properly dealt with, it will not only hurt you physically, but it hurts every relationship that you've got. It hurts your relationship with God. It hurts your relationship with people. And now, as I'll be quoting Dr. Caroline Leaf in a little bit, how your thoughts are real things, and thoughts are like trees, and that leads to emotion, and emotions are like the leaves on the trees. But then what we're also discovering now is that certain things can happen to you where your body experiences a sensation, which is an emotion. And that leads to a specific thought
Right.
that then can actually hurt your body if you keep thinking those particular thoughts.
Right.
And so we're learning all sorts of crazy stuff, but I want to apply this to marriage because especially as a dude, we're not always in touch with what we're thinking or feeling.
Right.
we just do stuff.
But I think for you, just being aware that there's such a connection between your physical body and your emotions.
Yeah.
It's like you've never been more eager to learn about it. It's like, okay, this kind of makes sense. I've been feeling this, and I really believe it's connected to this emotion.
Yeah.
And so I just think that this kind of new way of thinking has really helped you to really get into like what emotions are affecting my body.
Yeah. And it's interesting because last week, if you listened to our podcast with Denny and Heather Smith, how Heather and Denny were both on pastoral staff at a really big church in Garland, Texas. And she literally had a panic attack just before she was going to stand on stage, and she was going to go up there and sing. And this is something that she's gifted to do. She's really good at doing, but she had taken on so much responsibility and there was some ambition behind it that she had a full-blown panic attack. And then that led to a 2-year battle with anxiety and all these emotions to where she was debilitated. And so, I mean, I remember hearing stories like that with people that have suffered from that. Never really able to relate until about 2 months ago. I kind of had my own little episode with anxiety, which is interesting. And one of these days I'll do a whole podcast on it, on what happened and what I learned. But essentially I was working too hard. I was taking too much on myself, and it manifested itself in emotions that were coming out of me. And then I had this just deep hurt and anxiety inside me, and I didn't know what to do with it. And it honestly felt like I was going to die, which is crazy. It's like your body goes into fight or flight, and there's no reason for it to be in fight or flight.
Right.
You get this adrenaline and all sorts of stuff that's happening, and it really doesn't need to be happening. So anxiety is happening, and it's ripping people up and it's tearing them apart. But even at a smaller level, if you don't learn how to deal with your own personal emotions, then you're not going to be able to love your spouse the way that God wants you to love them. Because we're supposed to love our neighbor as we love ourselves, and that would include our spouse. Trapped emotions can harm us to a point where we don't accept ourselves for who we really are, and all sorts of stuff. So listen to this Bible verse in Psalm 139, verse 23 and 24. David is talking, and this is his prayer journal. And the first verse here in 23, it says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxious thoughts." Now, just stop there for a second, because this whole psalm is about God revealing hidden emotions that rob us of peace. The whole thing, Psalm 139. But then we get to this verse, and he mentions anxiety. He's like, God, here's what I want you to do. I want you to show me the hidden fears that disquiet my soul, because anxiety, so fear is about a past or a present threat. Anxiety is about a future potential threat.
Right.
Anxiety is projected fear, specifically the fear of powerlessness. It's like, I'm going to lose control. Like, I have this test I've got to take in a month, and I'm feeling anxious about it.
Right.
Well, what is that anxiety tied to? It's tied to the fact that I'm scared I'm going to fail it.
Right.
Like I'm powerless to to pass it. So
that's why we often feel most anxious with things that we haven't ever done before.
Yeah.
Right. So whenever something is new, we often feel like, can I actually do this? I don't know. I've never done it before. You don't have a testimony to stand on.
That's
You're just
right.
like, what if I get up there and I can't do it? What if I try this and I actually can't physically do it? That creates that feeling of anxiousness because it's projected powerlessness.
And if one spouse is feeling this in your marriage, it will mess not only that spouse up, but it'll mess the relationship up, because they don't realize they're operating out of anxiety. And anxiety is going crazy right now. The Hebrew word for anxiety here, Tor, is, I don't know how to say it the right way, sarapim. Sarapim, whatever.
Oh, yeah, sarapim.
Sarapim. Oh, okay, yeah, for sure. Yeah, those are really good. They taste really great, especially put butter on them. Okay, but sarapim, it means troubled thoughts, the processing of information which causes distress in one's mind and heart. So David wants to know what's going on in his subconscious heart and mind. So that's what he's asking for right here. This is long before we had brain science.
Right.
This is long before we discovered that emotions are actual things.
Right.
And emotions can get trapped into certain organs in our body.
Right.
As traditional Chinese medicine points out, that now we know over here in America, in the West, as we've adopted it in the last 10 to 20 years, where we realize, no, emotions are real things, and if we don't process through them, they get trapped into certain organs and they can wreck it, like grief in the lungs or anger in the liver,
right?
Or whatever. Like, we're learning all these things. It's crazy. But David in this verse is basically saying, put me in a struggle, God, so I can see what's going on inside of me.
Wow.
And marriage, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't already know this, is the context of that struggle.
We got a struggle for you.
That's why God puts you together with your spouse. Look, sometimes it feels like sandpaper. You know, you're roughing each other up a little bit, but you're smoothing each other out.
Yeah, so true. Oh my goodness.
So David's like, okay, so Lord, here's what I want you to do. And so this is a daring prayer for all of us, and it's going to help you in your marriage. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me or test me and know my anxious thoughts, which basically means, God, I pray that somehow, some way that you reveal to me if I'm dealing with anxiety and maybe a subconscious anxiety level,
right?
And just show it to me and let me see it, and then help me to deal with it. But he doesn't stop there. He goes on to verse 24 and he says, and see if there be any hurtful way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting.
Wow.
Now, there are some translations that say, see if there's any offensive way in me.
Yeah.
But Psalm 139 is not talking about God revealing to David certain unconscious sin. You know, David prayed that in Psalm 51, where he's like, you desire truth in the inmost part. Like, you don't want me to have any sin that's abiding down inside of me, you know, like motivation or attitude or intention or bitterness toward a person type thing. That's all sin.
Right.
And we need to be praying that God reveals that to us so that we can deal with it. But that's Psalm 51. Psalm 139 is talking about emotions.
Right.
So David is saying, what is hurtful in me?
Wow.
And the Hebrew word for that is, here's another one for you, Tor. Im derek asab. How about that?
I'm not even going to try that one.
Yeah. Now you need im derek asab with like pasta sauce, because then you can swallow it a lot better.
Gotcha.
Not good. Okay.
Good try.
Okay. So im derek asab relates to physical pain and emotional sorrow. So as I was researching this, and by the way, I did a live stream. My brother and I do a live stream every Thursday morning. I say it's a live stream. We record it on Wednesday, and then we upload it on Thursday.
It used to be live stream.
Used to be live stream, but there's too many technical issues, and Facebook now shadow bans me and David. So we're trying to figure out ways around it. But I did a live stream on this on Psalm 139. So you need to download the Benham Brothers app, and you can get that and hear the whole thing. But I was reading a theologian about these particular two verses where David is basically praying something that all of us should pray.
Right.
You know, search me, O God, know my heart, try me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there be any hurtful way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Pray that over yourself and your relationship. And I was reading this guy, his name is Skip Moen, and he said this particular passage is not about unconfessed sin. David is asking here for inner healing. What is there in me that puts me on the road to emotional, psychological, and physical pain and sorrow? This is an assessment of how those unresolved, unconscious, repressed traumas derail me.
Wow.
I need divine assessment because I just can't see what's happening in those dark corners of my soul. More accurately, I won't see. When we block feelings, we unknowingly stunt the necessary healing process that can lead us to a natural release. What David teaches us in this psalm is that he's not interested here in recalling unconfessed sin. He's interested in our recovery. And for that to happen, we need God's thorough analysis.
Wow.
That's what David is saying here in this psalm. And as a married couple, the thing that can derail your relationship as quick as anything is unprocessed emotions. It's things that happen deep, that are trapped deep down.
Yeah.
And if you read our book, Beauty in Battle, you'll know that we have a chapter in there. I forget what I titled that chapter, where I was a 13-year-old boy, and I had this girl that I liked,
right?
And we went to this party, and I had this really good buddy of mine who went with me, and or who was at the party as well, and it was this girl's birthday party, and so she was kind of like my girlfriend, but not really, but as close as you can get. And
you really wanted her to be.
be nice to me, Tor. So then it came time for the girls there. They did this little game where they had to ask the boys to dance. So the lights went off in the house, and there was like this slow song that came on, and the girls have an opportunity to ask the boys to dance. And she walked right up into my direction and reached her hand out and asked my buddy to dance with her.
Oh,
Okay, so that tore me up pretty good. And I just never processed through it. I was just a 13-year-old boy.
that elicited very strong emotion in you as a 14-year-old.
Yeah, 13. 14, same thing. But I didn't even know it until it came out. And you need to read our book, and you'll get that. You read that chapter where you can see how that manifested itself 5 years into marriage with me and Tori.
And
it's crazy.
I know you've told me that you went to the bathroom, you cried.
I did.
You let that emotion out, but then you were like, oh no, nobody's going to know about this. I can't, I cannot let anyone know that this hurt me. And you sucked it up and you walked out like you were the man still, right?
But I wasn't the man.
But you were crushed inside. And so I really believe you didn't deal with that emotion. You cried, but then it was like, no, that's not going to hurt me. You're not going to reject me. I'm fine. Yeah. And that became a buried emotion. And it was something that you feared even in our marriage. Like, wait, are you going to leave me?
Yes.
Like, are you going to choose somebody else?
It's so weird.
It's crazy how that works.
Yeah. But, and I thought it was the manly thing to do. Like, suck it up. Who cares? It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
She was ugly anyway. Kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I thought that was a manly thing to do. Mm-hmm. But we men struggle with this. It's like, I can't let my wife into this thing that hurt me. Like, she just said one little thing and it actually hurt. Well, what it hurt was probably something that you experienced when you were 14 or when you were 8 or when you were 3. Who knows? But if you don't let your spouse in and let her know that hurt, or that somebody said at the office, or somebody did something and it made you so uber angry and you had an outburst. A lot of times what that's touching is some deep emotional anger that was caused long ago, and we got to get to the root of those things. Right.
Yeah. Emotions can tell us so much. And I know that's why God gave them to us, because they speak to us. And there are 3 different ways that emotions are sourced.
Yes.
Okay, so I
love this.
Yeah, they come from genetics.
Yeah, which is inherited.
Yeah, which totally aligns with the scripture verse 3 to 4 generations, right? Where like the generational curses.
Your sins are passed down to the 3rd and 4th generation.
Yeah, these things that were undealt with.
Yeah.
Your great grandmother may have had an experience, and you have this strong emotion, but yet it doesn't really make sense why you have this strong emotion.
Yeah.
But maybe it was something that actually your grandmother experienced, and you somehow now struggle with jealousy or, whatever it may be. And it's like, well, I don't really remember like an experience where I should be feeling this. It could be a generation or genetic. And then, experienced our own lived experiences, with emotions. Like for you, that was a lived experience. You felt it very strongly, and it was a buried emotion. And then projected. This is when people project their emotions onto you.
This one is crazy.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think for women, this is even a bigger deal than maybe it is to men. Maybe not. I don't know. That's totally me speculating. But I know for me, that I can take on people's emotions pretty easily. When my kids are feeling sad or upset, like my whole body is like exhausted,
right?
Like to a point where I'm like, this is ridiculous. I've got to learn how to release this. Even within friendships before, if I think somebody's upset with me, it can ruin my day because there's no projected emotion that I've taken on.
And this happens a lot with guys actually, is that if someone is competing against you,
right?
Like they're feeling insecure when you're around, they can't ask you any questions, but you ask them questions, and deep down they're competing with you. What it does, especially for a guy, is it causes you to then compete with them. Right. That's what a projected emotion is like. It's like they're feeling competitive.
You want to dominate me?
Okay. So I'm going to dominate you. That's a projected emotion. Right. So it's the 3 sources of emotion: inherited, experienced, or projected. And getting to the root of these things is there's really no right or wrong way on how to do it. Now, Tori and I have a 3-step process we've shared. If you go back into our we shared it on a podcast a while back. We'll share it again on our next podcast, but with a little bit of a different spin to it. But I like what Caroline Leaf talks about, and she's really good. Mm-hmm. I forget exactly what the name of her book is, Switch on Your Brain or something like that. But she teaches how thoughts are real things in the brain, like trees, and emotions are like the leaves.
Yeah.
And so David, when he's praying this prayer in Psalm 139, he's essentially like, okay, now here's what I understand, that my thoughts can actually lead to certain emotions. And if I'm not careful, these emotions, if I don't process them the right way, then they can damage my body. In the same way that if I took an entire head of broccoli, did I say that the right way? A head of broccoli.
Yeah. Yep.
Like a big, massive broccoli stalk, which is very difficult for your body to digest that unless it goes through your food processor, which is called your mouth.
Right.
Like your teeth are food processors. So when you take that broccoli and you put it into your mouth and you're chomping it up, what your mouth is doing with your teeth is it's processing that food, that broccoli, so that when you swallow it, your body can take what's good and discard what's bad.
Yep.
Now, if you just were able to take that full head of broccoli and just jam it down into your stomach without it being processed, it's going to wreck your digestive system.
Oh, man. Mm-hmm.
It's going to wreck it. So, yeah, especially since broccoli gives Tori like really bad
I knew
gas.
that was coming. Like I could have just even said it myself.
Yeah, but
you're so predictable.
It doesn't give Tori gas, but it does me. Let me just tell you, it's a party under the sheets at night. Just trying to fan that sucker. Okay, sorry, shouldn't have done that. But processing emotions, there's you can't just experience something, like something happens, some trauma, somebody says something, and you feel it. And it's actually something that you feel in your body, but then you don't deal with it.
Right.
You don't process through it. So this would be our encouragement. And we're going to give you 3 steps on the next podcast on how to process that and how to do it the proper way. So tune in next week because we don't have time to do it this week. But if you're, God has put you in your relationship with your spouse to help you process. And men, you need to let your wife coach you on this. Mm-hmm. And you need to let her process audibly as she does. Men often process things we just think. We just think and think and think and think. And then at some point we'll speak. Women think with their mouth. Mm-hmm. Like they need to think.
Verbally process.
Yeah, they need to not think, but they need to verbally process it. Mm-hmm. When I learned that that's what Tori was doing with her emotions, is that she was verbally processing and she didn't need me to fix it. Mm-hmm. Man, that really helped our relationship a lot.
Yeah, and verbally processing doesn't mean that you are accurately processing. I mean, like you and I will go for walks and I'm trying to think through some things. And by the end of the walk, I'm like, okay, disregard everything I said at the beginning. I got, like you just need to start talking it out.
Yes.
And I think for you, it's like you wanted to fix it. But by the time, by the end of the walk, I've already kind of worked through it. And you're like, yes. Oh, okay.
Yes. So let me just wrap it up with this. So just as a reminder, an emotion is an impulse to act. So when you are feeling an emotion, it's an impulse to act. So anger is an emotion with a purpose. The purpose of anger is to see that justice is done. Mm-hmm. Next week, we're going to answer a question about anger specifically, about what to do with anger. But anger is to see that justice is done. Grief is so that you can help. So people can come and bear your burden and help you bear your burden, and you can help others bear their burdens, right? It's a burden-bearing emotion.
Right.
So every emotion is an impulse to act. But now a feeling is something that's tied to your perception of what happened. So an emotion is tied to something that happened. A feeling is tied to your perception of what happened. So a feeling now is born out of an emotion. Mm-hmm. So an example, you got two women who walk into work and their boss notices that both of them got their haircut. And he says to the first, "Hey, get your haircut, looks great." She goes, "Thanks." And she goes to her computer and she starts working. The next one comes in, he says, "Hey, you got your haircut, looks great." And she goes, "Oh, well, thank you." And then she goes back to her computer and before she starts working, she starts thinking, "Wow, That was really nice of him. I noticed he doesn't have a ring on his finger. And what's interesting is my husband didn't say a word about how my hair was cut. You know what I'm saying? And now all of a sudden she's starting to process what he said differently than how the first girl took it transactionally.
Right.
He just noticed something cool, whatever. The next girl is actually processing it. And the way that she's processing it could lead to her having feelings for him.
Right.
So that's the difference between emotion and feeling. Emotion is tied to something that happened. Feeling is how you processed what happened. That's why if you haven't listened to our 2 podcasts on how to affair-proof your marriage, parts 1 and 2, you need to listen to that because we talk about how to make sure that you don't fall for that trap.
Right. And that emotion that second woman in your example was emotion of gratitude, right?
Yes.
I like that he noticed that. I appreciate him for noticing. I appreciate, it's an appreciation.
Right.
Whereas the first one was like, okay, great. So it's not like this deep appreciation. And I think that we need to utilize the power of appreciation correctly.
Yeah.
Like we should be appreciating what our spouse does and what they say and the things that they do. But yet we shouldn't be appreciating some of the things that people of the opposite sex might be doing that could elicit that strong feeling of appreciation, because gratitude is a bonding agent. And so we have to be aware of that and to, just to monitor how we are processing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay. So now if next week we're going to dive into how you're going to process emotions properly. But what you can do as a little precursor is you can look back at one of our podcasts, and we do share our little 3-step process. Let it out, let it go, let it happen. We share that. We also have that in our book on processing emotion. Next week, we're going to dive in deeper into that and give some practical tips and handles on how you'll be able to process through emotions so that emotions can draw you closer and not draw you further away from your spouse. But this is just the beginning. This is part 1 of talking about emotions. And I think we should finish it with a...
would you rather?
There you go.
Let's do would you rather. Would you rather drink someone else's snot or eat someone else's earwax?
That's just crazy. Are you getting this out of a book?
Yeah. Would you rather book?
Oh my gosh. Give me the earwax.
Yeah, I'll second that.
You kidding?
But ugh.
Oh, this is crazy. You got to give me something that doesn't give me like this visceral nastiness, nausea feeling.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week, or you'll hear us next week.
Yeah, or we'll see you, whatever. Hey, don't forget to send us your jokes.
Yes, bring them.
All right, we'll see you.